This is Joe at Sierra Specialty Automotive. That was the name of the business that I started and ran for 20 years, restoring brake cylinders for people with old cars. Hydraulic brake cylinders, master cylinders, wheel cylinders, clutch cylinders. When I went to swap meets to advertise the business, I often got a chance to look around at what was available in the aisles, and I always kept an eye out for original cylinders that might have particular value to restorers. I got a couple on the roll-around cart now. I'm going to change this setup, bring you in a little closer, take a look at them, and talk about why they're different, why they're special. Here we have a Delco master cylinder, Delco Moraine. Delco stands for Dayton Electric Light Company in Dayton, Ohio. They made a lot of the original master cylinders for General Motors cars and trucks. This particular one is off of a 1955 through mid-58 Chevy car. So a guy who's doing a high point restoration on 55 or 6 or 7 Chevy really needs this. It's very visible under the hood on the firewall. This one has the original correct casting number, has the original correct cast iron threaded lid, the brass banjo bolt and fitting. Another feature on this one is this casting plug. This hole is for access to get the core out, and it gets filled with essentially a freeze plug, but it also has a part number on it. And the true restorer, the high point restorer, is looking for all of those features on a correct master cylinder. So this is worth picking up at a swap meet or even a yard sale. I got these typically $5, $10 from people who were completely satisfied with a master cylinder from Napa or O'Reilly. But when this is properly restored and sold to a high point restorer, it's worth a whole lot more. It's worth a couple $100, somewhere in that neighborhood. Here's another one. This is the one I'm playing with today. This is an original master cylinder for a Ford vehicle. This was made by Bendix. Bendix made a lot of the original equipment, OE cylinders for Fomoco products over the years. This one has a casting number 2227061. It was used on a lot of different products from the late 60s into at least the mid 70s. Might have been used on station wagons, pickup trucks, full-size cars. Also was used, this casting number was used on the 1969 and 1970 Mustang Boss 429, which was a limited production high-performance vehicle. Now, in some of the other applications in which this casting number was used, the port configurations were different. This particular cylinder has, for the front brakes, the disc brakes, which you can tell by the larger reservoir, it has a 3/8 by 24 threaded outlet port. The forward port for the rear brakes with the smaller reservoir is threaded 1/2 inch 20. This is not correct for the Boss 429 application. The Boss 429 wants to have the front brake port, the one closest to the firewall, threaded at 1/2 inch 20, and the forward port closest to the radiator for the rear brakes should be threaded 9/16 18. And my project today is to make that change. That turns this from a essentially worthless cylinder for say a 76 Ford pickup into a very valuable Boss 429 master cylinder. There's a couple other features that the restorers look for on these. One of them is a hex head stop bolt, which goes in this port, retains the cylinder. When they're judging, the judges will reach under and feel for that hex head stop bolt. And if they don't find it, they're going to knock off points for this car. Another feature that they look for is this. I'm going to turn a couple of different angles and hope it shows up. Right here, there's a pimple on the casting. And that's another feature that the judges look for. They pay more attention to that actually than they do to the casting number, but there's always the possibility that they might hold a mirror under there and look for that casting number. So the restorer does need to be sure that the cylinder he's using meets all these criteria. So the project today is to set this up in the milling machine and convert these ports, remachine them from 3/8 24 to 1/2 inch 20, and from 1/2 inch 20 to 9/16 18. So I'll break down this setup and move over to the milling machine for the next part of the video. All right, I got a compromise going here between a good camera angle and my access. I think this will be a pretty good view, and I think I won't get in the way too much. I have located center on these ports using the appropriate tap drill for each size. This is 29/64 going into a 1/2 inch 20 tapped hole. This gets me within, I'm sure, within 2 or 3 thousandths, which is plenty good enough for this. There's a lot of flexibility, a lot of room, wiggle room in the fit of the steel tube over the brass tube seat, secured by the threaded tube nut. And I've written down my coordinates on here so I can go back and forth using the DRO as necessary. So the first thing I want to do on this 9/6 or this 1/2 inch 20 hole is drill and tap that for 9/16 18. I want these threads to be 1/2 inch deep. I have a 4-inch stroke on my milling machine, so I'm going to back this down to 3.5 to clear. All right, that's 3.5 to the corner of the flute, and we'll just come down and I'll just bottom out the travel on the quill, and I should be 3.5 inches deep. believe I'm going to slow that down. That looks darn good. We'll set that 33/64 bit aside and set up a 9/16 18 taper tap. Excuse me, that's a plug tap. Enough of a reduction on the tip to get me started in the hole. Then we'll switch over to a bottoming tap to finish. And we are machining this dry because it's cast iron. No lubricant, usually no lubricant required with cast iron. There's a good start, good straight start, square to the hole. Take a 9/16 18 bottoming tap, run it all the way down. And we may as well go ahead and countersink that now. I have to bring the table up to drill this hole, so I may as well go ahead and take advantage while we're on center. Put a little bit of a countersink chamfer on that port, and that one will be done. And we'll crank real slow on this. Hold the quill all the way down, bring the table up. That gives me better control. Other people have different ways of doing it, but this works well for me. There, we're just touching. We want to expose the thread plus just a tiny bit. And I think just about another 10 thousandths. All right. Now I'm going to move the table over to 0, 0. There are other features in that port. It is machined for a residual valve. That's a hole about 5/16 deep that takes a little rubber duckbill valve with a spring on it, followed by a tube seat that fits into a hole, a reduced diameter reamed for 3/8 of an inch. So when this is assembled, the spring goes in, well, the spring goes into the valve, then that drops in spring first, tube seat goes on top of that, and then that's finished. There's zero, zero. Now we go back to the 29/64 bit for the threads on here, and again we want these threads a 1/2 inch deep. That's a measurement derived from empirically derived from measuring a whole lot of master cylinders. They range maybe a 64th of an inch up and down from that, but a half inch is a good round average number. And there we go again. And we're slow on the speed. We'll leave it right there. Maybe a little bit more. Now for this port, it was originally set up for a tube seat that fits in a hole about 2/100ths of an inch in diameter, and we need to machine this as if it were going to get a residual valve in a tube seat. We're not so concerned about the residual valve part, but we do need to machine it for the tube seat. So we need 23/64 to get the hole to ream for the tube seat. And now I want to go an inch deep on this, so I've got to bring the table up. A little too far. That looks good. Now we need to make room for the reamer. And we'll run that to the bottom of the hole. Again on this slow speed. I might even take it down a little slower. Yeah, that's about right. Clear the chips out of there. That'll do that. Now we use our tap driver, our guided tap driver, to start the 1/2 inch threads, again using a plug tap, which has enough of a reduced diameter to pilot itself in that hole. And again, tap this dry. Get a good start. Go to a nice sharp new bottoming tap. And finish it off. Now we go back to a countersink and put a little bit of a chamfer on the outside of that hole. Felt that touch just barely. And that looks pretty good. All right. Now this is properly set up for the Boss 429 application, and that makes it worth, I don't know, I'm going to guess maybe 10 times as much to the right person, and I have the right person in mind. One of my old customers called me and asked me if I had this item in my what I call my bone pile, my collection of cylinders that I acquired at swap meets over the years, and I did find one, and so now we're both going to be happy. That'll do it for this job. Fairly quick and easy one. I want to thank you for coming by the shop and hanging out while I did this work. I hope it was interesting, and I hope you'll come back sometime in the future. Thank you. We're very fortunate to live in the Sierra Nevada mountains at about 3,400 feet elevation in northeastern California. Lately we have a little family of deer, a young doe, and a late pair of fawns, quite late in the year. This is September. They've been hanging around. This is a view out our front window. I thought the mom might be over to the left there, but she must be behind the wagon. She stays, of course, very close to her young ones. Earlier in the year, we had a family of 4, an older doe and 3 fawns hanging around. Here's a quick shot of Mom. She likes to hang out in our carport in the backyard. So she's often there. She digs in the dirt where the ground is cool in the shade of the afternoon. She spends quite a bit of time there.